I just don't think it's possible. There are too many contextual variables for there to ever be a valid and reliable whole cohort national test. Sampling is a different matter. Classroom assessment is a different matter. I hope that semi-answers your question. The long version would be a rather nice seminar, which I'm always pleased. I'm here for 4 days, I gather, anyway, so we can have a conversation.
My name is Godswill from Nigeria. Mr. Boyle, I think I agree with you. I share your views on humanisticism. That is to say, bring up individuals that are not only cognitive, but also tend to make the world a more peaceful place. And that also brings pressure on assessment instruments on affective domain. As the world congeals into a global globe, the truth cannot become even more emphatic. I think we have a little problem, and as we bring up challenges to assessment. When we bring up individuals that make bombs and compete in contradiction to acquiring nuclear energy, it also brings to bear that the aspects of humanisticism couldn't have been more bare than now. I think my challenge is, how do we begin to re-emphasize the affective component of our assessment? How do we begin to integrate them to making judgments in the classroom? How do we begin to make certification, not just on the cognitive variables or factors, but how do we begin to integrate? Those of us in assessment have always emphasized that we need to be more effective, we need to bring up the affective components, not just psychoproductive. But how do we do this? How do we make them reliable in the classroom environment? How do we bring up the teacher capacity? Those that will also bring to bear that when we give certification at various levels, be it primary or tertiary or whatever, that those individuals will bring up will not wipe out future generation. I think this is the basic challenge. How do we begin to make the affect? How do we begin to make them bear upon humanisticism? To bring up individuals, not just at individual level, but also at institutional levels, at global levels, to begin to make people see the world a place that will become more humanistic than we have now. I think, Mr. Boyle, we need to clear that issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I think you were asking me about the affective domain within assessment. So that's going to be the tenor of my response. If I have misheard, then I do apologize. So my response would be that within the redefining of assessment, to me, always the primary definition of assessment, within which it is integrated with teaching and learning, you naturally, if you understand teaching and learning, are incorporating the affective domain. The problem with the testocracy is that it focuses 100% on cognition. Now, if you are teaching, you have to have the tripartite affective domain, conative domain, and the cognitive domain, and then it works well. The affective domain enables the conative domain within the child to come to the forth. So you do have what I think you were asking me, that the children start, young people, adolescents, start to demonstrate what they are capable of achieving in circumstances, i.e. rich environments, rich learning environments, which is what a school should be striving for the next generation, because we haven't had it for the current generation. We've had sterility in classrooms. You have this pre-planned 3-part lesson written out. Now that's not an affective domain environment in which a young person is going to learn.
Well, one more question, please, and we're going to close the session.
Good morning, Professor. I've got 2 questions to ask you. The first is, I actually operate in the world of tertiary and vocational education because I gave up the secondary school system and education out of fury and frustration. And I think we're doing it a bit better, certainly in New Zealand, in the area there. But I also have a 7-year-old granddaughter. And I'm watching her in the education system at the moment. I was interested that Carol mentioned IB, because the school that she goes to has brought in IB into the lower levels of the school. And they're absolutely fascinated and, if not to say, almost obsessed with the notion of inquiry-based learning, to the exclusion, in my opinion, of everything else. And having had my granddaughter stay with me for 3 weeks and been very involved in her homework, where I did the teaching because none of the learning had happened at school, I was a wee bit concerned about that. But I'd rather have that than the scourge that's actually operating in the New Zealand environment, which is called national standards. And we have a new curriculum in this country, in our country, which in effect would do a lot of what you're talking about. But a political agenda has brought in this whole range of national standards under which large percentages of children will be told that they're failures because they haven't met these national standards, which in my opinion have been very poorly designed. So my first question is inquiry-based learning. My second is, could you come to New Zealand, please, and say very loudly and emphatically, and if not rudely, what you've just said here, because I think it would be a very useful thing to have happen in our country at this moment.
Well, I'll check the diary. Thank you. Your first point, I'm delighted that you've been reintroduced to inquiry-based learning, and surely part of the extension, the natural extension of that inquiry-based learning is that you and your 7-year-old will have had some really good learning conversations, which your 7-year-old will have been able to feed back to her teacher as to how it should be a two-way learning inquiry situation. So I'm being deliberately light-hearted because the second part of your question, which was very serious, and not that the inquiry-based one wasn't serious, obviously, but the whole issue of national standards, I can't believe that hollow farce has run as long as it has. I look round this room here and I see, and there must be at least 50 people in the room, and all of you 50 have put aside 4 or 5 days of your lives to apply your thinking to a major education issue, the linking of assessment to teaching and learning. And yet we allow our politicians, the majority of whom depend on us to occupy the situations that they're in, to impose farces like national standards. It's an impossibility. You can't have national standards, just as you can't have international testing. So I'll certainly come over and I'll talk and browbeat to whoever you want me to. More than happy. Thank you very much indeed. I've enjoyed the session this morning. Thank you. Thank you.
Could I please invite Dr. Pornpan Waithayangun on the stage to present Professor Boyle and Dr. Salman the tokens of appreciation. Dr. Pornpan, please.